Hello everyone, I hope you're keeping well. It's Saturday night and it's November, and you can see the nights are getting darker. The days are getting shorter and they look a bit duller, don't they, and wetter. But this is the time of year where we can actually bring in light into our home. We can light some lovely candles and lanterns and lamps and make our homes more colourful and brighter. It is perhaps no coincidence that I think tonight falls on a Diwali celebration. I think this whole week actually, all around the world, there have been different festivals of light being celebrated. I believe Hindus celebrate Diwali as a victory of light over darkness. And in Germany and France, people celebrate Martinmas, which is a festival of lanterns. People get together and light lanterns. I mean, they create also walk through the woods for children. Well, children carry their little lanterns. We actually used to do something like this at my school when I used to teach at Waldorf school, and it was in the Czech Republic. And this is a time for people to come together and share stories and songs together, and come together and share that kind of a warmth of friendship and community. And so today I would like to invite you to create some of these lanterns with me. And don't be afraid if you don't like fire or candles. It's absolutely fine. There's also going to be an illustrated story at the end. And I hope it will inspire you to create your own story or write a poem or create your own illustration. So shall we get started? The first technique we are going to look at is painting on the glass jars. I'm sure you've got your own collection at home, and they've got these beautiful shapes. Each one of them is quite different, so you can actually work with the shape as well when you are painting. And this one, I'll start with this one because it reminds me of a lamp or lantern. So I'm using acrylics, but you can also use watercolors or any other paints you've got at home. And let's see what happens. And I'd like to show you a little trick here. You can actually etch into the wet paint, and you can create sort of different type of patterns. Eventually the light will show through once it dries. It can be abstract shapes or something a bit more real. It's all up to your imagination. Another technique I'd like to share with you is the decoupage technique. Also, they call it decoupage. It's a particular brand, I believe, and the papers are slightly thinner than the decoupage papers. And you can buy a whole set of papers with different patterns already, like these for example. Or you can simply use tissue papers of various colors. And then you have the decoupage glue, but you can also use a PVC glue. It helps to put some glue down first, and then we can start adding our pieces. And we just simply paint the glue over the top. It will dry clear. It looks white at the moment, but it will dry clear. And we can start designing our own pattern. Or just do it randomly. It will become a colorful collage. And just keep adding pieces. While it's drying, let me show you some of the earlier ones I did. If you don't want to put a candle in them, it doesn't really matter because they make a beautiful colorful decoration during the day as well. Once your glue dries, which will probably be about half an hour, it depends how much glue you use. Sometimes it's longer, maybe an hour, it might be still tacky. You can also use acrylics or other paints on top of your decoupage. So you can create a collage with paint, make the shape more defined. As you can see, it creates a different texture. And finally, if you haven't got any paints or any glue at home, you can use a very simple method, which is just using any fabrics that you find at home, or even tissue papers. Anything which is see-through with a nice pattern. You can already see what a beautiful pattern that will make on a candle, on a lantern. Also, you can use lace, because it will add a beautiful texture. Or perhaps even a variety of lace. Lace on lace. And then they just look beautiful. One thing to remember when we are working with candles and fire, please do remember health and safety. I wouldn't want you to burn yourself. The glass can get hot, even the bottom of the glass, and so I'm using these slate placemats here, or you can use glass or cork, anything that's not gonna burn a hole through anything precious for you. And also please do put the candle in the center of the lantern, because if it's too close to the wall, it may the glass may actually break. And now that we have created these lanterns to bring us some warmth and brightness into our home, we can also think about stories or poems or any pieces of writings about lights or fire or lanterns. And the one I would like to bring to you today is one that I used to love as a child. When I was growing up in the Czech Republic, we had a lot of folk stories and fairy tales, and this particular one is a winter story, but it brings the whole story of 12 months together. And I have created illustrations for this story, and I hope it might inspire you to do your own illustrations and to write down your own stories. The story will be narrated by my beloved husband, and as I said, illustrated by me, so hope you enjoy it. Tinom tanom nakopečku stála, tinom tanom na mňa pozerala.
Once upon a time, high in the mountains, there was a small village. On the outskirts of the village, a mother lived with her two daughters. One of them was her own. Her name was Helena, and the other one was a stepdaughter, Marushka. She favored her own daughter and detested Marushka, for she was beautiful. The mother and the stepsister often teased and taunted her. Marushka had to do all the housework at home, cook and clean, look after the house and farm animals. While Selina was very lazy, she was only interested in dressing up and showing herself off in front of the mirror. Marushka grew more and more beautiful each day, and that made the other two furious. One day, in early January, Helena tells her sister, "I want to embellish my dress with a bunch of violets. Go and fetch them for me." "But, my dear sister, where shall I find violets at this time of the year? The ground is frozen and covered with snow," said Marushka. "You mustn't talk back. I order you to bring violets, so go now, fetch them, or I will throw you out of the house." So Marushka left the house crying. It was a dark, dark night, and she could scarcely see the path. She only had her late father's old lantern to help her find the way. She walked for a long time and waded through deep snow. Her hands and feet were freezing. She was very hungry, but she still had not found any violets. Suddenly, somewhere in the distance, she caught a glimpse of a flickering light. Far, far in the distance, on the dark horizon, she could make out a faint light. She followed the light and soon found herself in the middle of a meadow where a fire was lit. There she saw 12 men's figures around the fire, each sitting on a boulder. 12 men, each representing 1 month of the year. On the tallest of the boulders there sat the tallest man, January. He had a shiny scepter in his hand as a sign of his reign. "Good evening, good men," said Marushka. "Can I warm myself up at your fire for a while?" "Of course, come closer, girl," said January. "But tell us, what are you doing here on your own in such freezing weather?" "I'm looking for some violets," she replied. "Now, in winter?" asked January. "I know, it's hopeless, but my sister ordered me to fetch them, otherwise she would throw me out of my home." And so she started crying. In that moment, January walked over to his brother March, whispered something in his ear, and handed him the scepter. March stood up and waved the scepter dramatically in the air. Immediately the fire started burning brighter. It soon got so warm that the snow on the ground started melting, and the green grass sprang out of the meadow. And in the middle of it there was a field of violets. "Quickly pick them and rush home," said March. Marushka kneeled down and picked a handful of the most vivid of violets and rushed back home. When she got back, her stepmother and stepsister were surprised that she completed the task, but they didn't stay content for long. The next day, Helena came to her sister and said, "I really fancy strawberries. Go to the forest and pick some for me. And I'm telling you, if you return without them, I'll throw you out of the house." So Marushka left crying again. Like yesterday, it was dark, dark night. Everywhere she looked, there was snow on the ground. Her hands and feet were freezing, and she was very hungry. Once again she saw a faint light on the horizon. She headed towards the light and soon found the meadow with the 12 men sitting in a circle around the large fire. Good evening to you, dear men. Can I warm myself up at your fire for a while?" she said politely. January answered, "Of course, dear girl, but what are you doing here on your own again in this freezing weather?" "I must find some strawberries." "Now, in winter?" asked January. Yes, I must bring them to my sister, otherwise she has threatened again to throw me out of the home. Once more she cried. So January got up from his seat and walked over to his brother June. He whispered something in his ear and handed him the scepter. June took on the rein, waved his scepter in the air, and the fire started burning brighter. It soon got so warm that the snow melted on the ground, the grass grew, flowers blossomed, and the berries ripened. Suddenly Marushka saw right in front of her a field of beautiful red strawberries. She did not hesitate and picked the biggest and reddest ones of all. She thanked the 12 brothers and rushed off home. Helena and her mother were amazed that she completed even this task. They greedily ate the strawberries and seemed to be happy for a while. It didn't last long. A few days later, Helena came to Marushka and said, Go to the woods and bring me some apples. But dear sister, there are no apples on the trees at this time of year. She tried to reason with Helena. You managed well enough the last 2 times, so off you go. So Marushka had to leave the house again, walked and walked for a long time, waded through deep snow, hungry and desperate. Once again she found the meadow, with the 12 men sitting in a circle round the fire. Marushka asked again if she could warm herself up and told the men that she needed to bring apples for her sister this time. They felt sorry for her, so January handed his scepter to his brother September. September waved the scepter in the air and the fire started burning brighter so that the snow melted, the green grass grew, trees sprang new leaves, flowers blossomed and the fruit ripened. Marushka soon could see the beautiful red apples on the trees. She stood on her tiptoes and picked the reddest and shiniest of apples. She thanked the men and rushed home. When she got home, the mother and Helena were gobsmacked that she completed even this task. They munched through the delicious apples eagerly, but they were not enough apples for them. Helena questioned her sister suspiciously. Were there only 2 apples? You must have picked more and ate them on your way home. I want more. And she decided to get some herself. She ordered her mother to go with her. They put their fur boots on and thick woolen scarves and left the house hastily. They too were fortunate and eventually found a meadow with the 12 men sitting round the fire. Hastily they rushed to the fire, in their impatience tripped over the log and almost put the fire out. Without greeting, without a plea, they demanded more apples, and in their arrogance they offended the men. January stood up in all his height and waved his scepter angrily. The sky turned black. Heavy clouds drew closer and started to blanket the ground with deep snow. The women left at once, running down the hill back towards the village and their home. However, in the snow blizzard they lost their way. In the meantime, Marushka at home was looking out the window, watching the approaching snowstorm with concern. She lit her father's lamp in the window so that her stepsister and stepmother would find their way home. Long time she waited for them, but they never returned.
Tinom tanom nakopečku stála, tinom tanom na mňa pozerala, tinom tanom nepozeraj na mňa, tinom tanom nepôjdeš ty za mňa. So I hope you enjoyed the story and also the workshop. I hope it has inspired you to create some interesting artwork, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it on Facebook and in the Zoom groups. Take care and hope to see you soon. Bye!